when you learn how to box properly, that technique that Mike Tyson has is never going to disappear.
Yeah.
Till today, I would never want to get hit by Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Even when I was in my fighting prime, I would never want to get hit by Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Which says that I think he still can hit almost as hard as what he used to.
I do too.
But I feel like what he doesn't have is he doesn't have that ability to sustain that power for a long time, just because of age. The more of an athlete and the harder you trained when you're young, as you get older, your testosterone levels are going to be a lot lower than the person who just exercised and worked out and did those things naturally and didn't overtax their body. I make sure people don't mix up bodybuilding with what I do, because bodybuilding is aesthetics. It's about looking good. Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're building force or strength. And of course, you're getting stronger because it's hypertrophy. You're trying to get the muscle bigger.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean a guy with that big muscles is that strong. And I know there's always that controversy. And I always go back to Olympic lifting. I mean, you got guys doing 3 times their body weight.
Yeah.
And you'll never find a bodybuilder that can do 3 times their body weight in anything.
You're listening to Musings with Morales. Brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.
Welcome to Musings with Morales. My name is Morales, and I am super excited, all you fight fans, all you athletes, and all of you people who are trying to really make improvements in your life. I got a very special guest here today, Mr. Egan Inoue, all the way from Hawaii. Welcome, Egan, to Musings with Morales.
Thank you.
Great to have you on. What time do you got out there, Egan?
It is 4:08 right now.
4:08. And where exactly in Hawaii are you?
I'm right in Honolulu, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu.
Okay, that's the one place that I have been, and I've actually been to Hawaii one time. So again, thank you for joining us despite the time difference. For those of you who have not heard of the accolades of Mr. Inoue, Mr. Egan Inoue, he is actually a very accomplished athlete in several sports, a couple of them in the martial arts realm, and then I believe the third is it racquetball, Egan?
Yeah, racquetball. Yeah, racquetball.
So give me a breakdown, kind of. Let's go all the way back, because I think to talk of accolades, we sometimes really need to stem all the way back to like where did the influence come from? How did you get into this mindset of being a champion and getting to really the top of 3 sports at a world champion level?
It started for me basically with racquetball. And I started as Little League Baseball, and I grew up playing baseball. I wasn't like the best baseball player, and I had a younger brother. I have a younger brother, Ensign, and he's 2 years younger than I am. But he's more of a natural athlete.
Okay.
And so I had to practice hard in order to keep up with him, or like to be his older brother and be better than him. I had to spend a lot of time just to be as good, or if not a little better than him. And I think that's where I learned that in order to be good at something, you got to grind and you got to be able to put in the work. And so by the time I got to racquetball, I realized, what I needed to do in order to become, the best at racquetball. And I think that's basically where it started. And, like racquetball, one of the things that really drove me and really motivated me was my grandfather had told me that there's no way you can be a professional athlete because you're Asian and you're small and you can't compete against, the Caucasian people and the black people because they're built for athletics. They're a lot larger than you. They're stronger than you. And I remember telling myself, there's no way I'm going to show my grandpa. I'll show him.
That's interesting. I've had some moments in my life that stemmed from actually the same thing. My grandfather kind of saying that you can't do it. One of them was the career choice, and I actually didn't do it. I wanted to be a marine. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid, and he was like, "Nope, it's like 5% of people that get that job." So I was like, "Okay, which one can I go get? Go get a job?" so interesting.
You're a lot smarter than me. Then I was like, "Heck no, let me show you."
But hey, you did it. Kind of what was the sequela of gaining that greatness in the sports? You said that it started with racquetball. Is that what you excelled at first, and then you got into the martial arts competitively at a later date, or how did the martial arts start?
Yeah, so basically I started martial arts from when I was 4. I competed in karate my grandfather was a karate black belt, and I used to go to his school and I would train, and he had me doing the kumites and the katas. When I was 4, I was competing against the 5 to 7 year olds just because there wasn't anything younger than that. And not that that helped anything in martial arts, but it really got me interested in martial arts. And of course, Bruce Lee, and which made me switch from one art to the next, and I just kept changing arts. And that was basically how I started with martial arts.
Did you take to the Jeet Kune Do way, or like wanting to like not be constrained by one dogma or doctrine as far as the martial arts goes, and trying to bring together a combination? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, and totally. At one point, I got my instructorship with Jeet Kune Do.
Oh, really?
And it was actually with Burton Richardson, which is Jeet Kune Do Unlimited.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you got into the martial arts really before you knew much about life, right? And you ended up to be a top competitor. What years were you competing in the? I know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then also in the in different forms or different platforms of MMA as well, right?
Yeah. So then after racquetball, I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, I started about my last year of racquetball, my last 2 years of racquetball, I got into Jiu-Jitsu, and I was really careful how I played because I was making my living playing racquetball, and one good arm lock that pops this would ruin my racquetball career. So I was really careful. And during that time, because my sponsors was paying for me to fly from Hawaii back and forth, I would always stop in LA, and I used to train with Rickson Gracie.
Okay.
And so he was actually my
beast.
Before Ensign actually started me, he taught me, and then Ensign told me, you got to see Rickson Gracie.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started training with Rickson, and I learned so much from Rickson. I mean, the guy's incredible. I mean, till today, I still can remember the lessons he taught me from back before, right? And that was basically my start in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was in 1996.
Oh, wow.
So my racquetball world championships I won in 1986 and then 1990.
Okay.
And then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was 1996 and 1997. So 96 I won the blue belt world championships, and then in my weight class. And then I went back the next year for the purple belt in 97, and I won the purple belt absolute. Yeah, and being at
Quite
181 pounds. Yeah, and my first opponent was a 6'7" or 6'6", and he was like 290 pounds. I mean, the video's incredible. I mean, the guy's just a giant.
Back in the day, so absolute, but this is around the same time when MMA was kind of hitting mainstream as well, and there were a lot of folks that were fighting in open categories, right? Open tournaments. What was your first experience in mixed martial arts? Which platform did you fight with, and what was the size of that opponent?
So the first mixed martial arts was in Shuto in Japan. And I fought an opponent larger than me. I mean, back then it didn't really matter. Didn't have as much rules.
Yeah.
And I basically took my brother's place. He had a staph infection and couldn't fight. So I jumped in his place and then fought his opponent. And a guy from, I think his name was Gordon Detman from Australia. And I got lucky, submitted him with a triangle. That was it. After that, I started fighting. But before that, I've never fought before. And the only thing I really knew was, whatever I learned throughout the years in just all the different martial arts. And of course, I was already, the world champion in the blue belt and purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that took me a long way.
Have you seen a lot of changes in the three sports that you, at least from the world championship side, had achieved those accolades? Have you seen a lot of changes? What sort of changes? Good, bad? What are your thoughts?
You mean changes in the competition, or the changing in the rules, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's a pretty obvious question. Like the rules have changed drastically since those days, but I think more of like the maybe the work ethic, the mentality of the athletes themselves. I think back to the days where you were fighting, and I can kind of think back at some of the actors in the scene at that time when people were coming in a little bit more cocky and what today seems to be the norm was really frowned on at that time as like
Yeah.
a disrespect in the martial arts. So what are your thoughts around that? I mean, we see a lot of big actors on the scene right now in MMA and boxing that, they don't necessarily hold up the values of martial arts as we learned in the core.
Yeah. Well, I think because MMA is a mixture and it's a hybrid of a bunch of different arts together, kind of that respect, like the old school martial arts,
Yeah.
those things have gotten watered down a lot. And everybody pretty much knows is a one specific martial art by itself. Is now, if you think about it, is for discipline and to learn respect, and it's not necessarily to fight. And that's what MMA is. MMA is about fighting. It's like, it doesn't matter, what belt you have. It doesn't really matter how much respect you have. It's a matter of if you can fight.
That's right.
And do you want to fight, and do you like to fight? And that's where I think we're getting that different type of attitude. But I think also, a lot of the guys are doing it not because they're like that in general. They're doing it for the show. They get more money. They get more people wanting to see them lose. They get more haters. They get more likes. It's part of the game.
Yeah, the more haters you have, the more value you hold these days, it seems, right? The biggest actors out there are really actually controversial and not usually liked, right? Who do you like? Who do you like today? Who do you enjoy watching? Who? And maybe I'll give you a 2-layer question there. It's like, who do you enjoy watching, and who do you think represents the athletes the best out there today?
I still like watching our Hawaii guys. So Max Holloway and all the guys coming out of Max's camp. I like all of those guys, and I really feel those guys are pretty dang humble yet. And I think it's just the way it is in Hawaii, and those guys have a lot of respect for everyone. I don't think we really had much fighters out of Hawaii that were just like cocky and showboaty, and all the Hawaii fighters is my favorite.
Well, that's great. Paco's behind the camera right now, but we've talked a lot about Filipino culture, and it's something I actually really wanted to chat with you about. From my observations of your socials and your different platforms, the podcast that you do, it seems that pride, that community, that tie is absolutely there, just like it is in most of the Filipino community. Can you tell me a little bit about what drives that pride and, like I said, that sense of community, or even that expression of community in the Hawaiian culture?
I think it's all considered Asian, right? Like the Filipino, the Vietnamese, Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, and the influence here in Hawaii, I think, is really high. So we have a lot of different languages mixed in. So there's a lot of Japanese sounding words that we say in Hawaii that isn't a real word in Japanese. It's just kind of an added thing. And I would suspect it's the same for all the other different nationalities here in Hawaii. But I think the common thread between the Asian countries or the Asian people, is the way the old school raised us. It was so strict. It wasn't with a lot of compliments. I think I talked about this once before, where the old school people, like say my mom and my dad, they've never told me they love me. But and I'm not comfortable telling them that. So like, I'm trying to break that cycle, and I make sure I tell my kids I love them, and I give them props, and not overly, not like the new society today that, you go join a sport or you enter a competition and you get a trophy whether you win or lose.
Yeah.
So I'm not that far into it, but I'm really trying to make a good effort, and instead of say praise that you won first place or you got an A, I praise more the action that took them there. So you work super hard. I'm proud of you for working hard. I don't care the outcome.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to change some of those things, and I think we can still stay more humble and down to earth, even with that type of attitude.
That's really interesting. The I love you piece, right? From our parents, us as parents. Do you mind me asking how many children do you have and what age range?
Yep. So I got 5.
Oh, wow.
I got 4 girls, and my youngest is a son, and the oldest is 27 years old.
That's great.
So I got 27, 26. I got a 20-year-old. I got a 14-year-old, and I have an 11-year-old.
Congratulations on that. I have 4 children myself. I think
congratulations. I'm still alive.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think Paco, you're five as well. So
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
yeah, you got to watch our joke from the last episode. I think you'll really get a kick out of it. It was a joke about having a lot of kids. So I don't want to spoil it. Definitely look back
Okay,
on our last episode. But that love, that expression of love, whether it be action, do you feel that like the relationship you had with your parents, that you knew they loved you, they just don't say it, it's more of an action? What was the disconnect there, and why is it different for you with your children? Because I mean, at least from the following that I've from following you for this short period of time, I can see that you like actually really express publicly your love for your children. It's something very admirable.
I guess I never, because I was raised in that atmosphere, I never really thought about it, and I never, I just assumed. I take it for granted, I guess, that they love me, and of course they do, because they paid for everything. They housed me, they fed me, whatever sport or whatever I did, they supported me. So of course they love me, right?
Yep.
And through the years, as I'm getting older, I hear all these other people telling their kids they love them, and some of it's like for every little thing. Oh, I love you. Every time they leave the person or they get off the phone, they love you. And I know for a while I was thinking, man, you say that so much, it doesn't mean much. Because if my dad and mom them told me that just one time, I don't know, I might just break down.
Yeah.
So I want to tell my kids I love them and I'm proud of them. But I'm not going to go overboard, because I feel like there's that certain range when you tell all your friends you love them and then you tell your kids you love them. Like, it's a hard thing, to weigh, I feel.
Yeah, and
that's
the actions may not balance out on everybody as well, right? Everybody. Yeah. Agreed. So, that community, that pride that you have, the Hawaiian pride. Obviously, with the Hawaiian fighters, I agree with you. I think there's been a lot of tough and humble fighters that have come out of Hawaii over the years. Some of the, my favorites, yourself included, BJ Penn, Holloway, just really enjoy watching the fights, but also hearing the I guess the prequel and the sequel of the fight, like what is before and what's after the fight, is really, really good commentary dialogue. I've watched through some of your reflections on your fights and just truly am inspired by the lens that you have on life, but also in your fighting career. This was the late 90s, the early 2000s that you were an MMA fighter. Do you mind me asking what your age is today, Egan?
I'm 58.
58, and you look like incredible, man. Like before we got on, you didn't have a shirt on, and it's making me feel super horrible. I've already been going through this for the last couple of weeks. Like, all right, you got to get it under control, Morales. But obviously you're doing the right things. I think you're having a lot of fun. Aside from the sports that you have done competitively, you mentioned other sports. I see some footage of some really fun times on this funny looking board.
The foil board.
Right.
Yeah.
What is it called?
It's called a foil board, or
Foil board.
Some people call it a hydrofoil board.
Mm-hmm. And is it like electrically ran, or like how do you make that? Because that's pretty weird looking.
There's actually electric ones, but that's not what I'm on. I have a manual one, so basically you got to kind of catch a wave. Mm-hmm. So all you need is a little bit of whitewash to just get you going. And so the prone style is I'm on a surfboard, and it's like 4 foot 8 inches. And then what it is you kind of get your board moving through the whitewash. Mm-hmm. And then when you hit about 6 miles an hour, it'll lift up.
Yeah.
And then you're riding on this one little, like a blade.
Yep.
And then you're moving way faster than surfing. You can pump it out and catch another wave, so you can basically do laps.
Gotcha.
And right now, the road record, I think, is almost 4 hours. The guy caught one wave, and he just kept going
nonstop,
for almost 4 hours.
How about you?
I'm not even close to that. I'm
I was going to say, what have you got?
6 minutes or 8 minutes is my max right now, and my legs are burnt. My lungs are screaming.
So it's a tough workout. I mean, I think surfing is a tough workout, but this is also...
this is way tougher.
Oh, really? Is it
Yeah,
the
it's a
balance
lot tougher.
aspect of it or the actual action?
It's a lot easier to surf actually because this thing, the balance and the tip and everything is super sensitive, and the ocean conditions make a huge difference. But we can basically still foil board when you cannot surf because the surf is too small.
So good time.
So I
So,
do two forms. Yeah, I do two forms. One is prone where you paddle in like surfing,
uh-huh.
and one is like a stand-up paddle. And I really like the stand-up paddle one too. It's super challenging because the board's really narrow and it's a lot longer. But we can do stuff like what we call downwinding, where we'll start. I don't know, like right now I'm starting like maybe 2 miles or a mile away from where I end up, and
Oh, wow.
I'll catch a wave, pump out to sea, and then I'll downwind all the way to the.
So what do you
So I'll
do? Have
catch
somebody
little
pick you
ocean
up over
bumps.
there, or how do you deal with that? Like you started
Yeah,
over
we
like
catch rides. We leave one car on one side and one on the other, and then yeah.
very cool, very cool. And so you're active, you're happy, you're doing things for, I would assume, for yourself. That seems like a very isolated kind of get in your space sort of sport or activity. How important
Yeah,
is it? Is all of that?
I mean, for me, it's really important because when you're doing something like that, it's not like you're in a with a group of people. And then when you're flying on, we call it flying. When you're
Mm-hmm.
up on the board and you're gliding,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be super conscious of where the energy is on the wave or where the energy is on a bump. That is the key to the whole thing. So you got to be real sensitive on how you move your body. So
Yeah.
your mind has to be completely clear. So a lot of people have this. They describe it as like you're in a bubble, and then when the wave ends or you fall, it's like bam, you're out of the bubble and you're back to reality. And I feel like that's my silent time. It's
Yeah.
like meditation. It's my workout. Like today, for example, I was out for about maybe 80 minutes, and I burned 1,100 calories.
Oh wow, that's really high
And there's not
intensity.
much things you can do to burn that much
Yeah,
calories.
super high intensity.
Yeah.
Very, very. Wow, that's great. Egan, you also are training people today in various sports, overall wellness and health. You do a lot of different sort of coaching. Can you tell me a little bit about like how you're helping people in that regard today?
Yeah. So basically, I have two gyms, Egan's Fitness, and what I do is we started off as like a boot camp style, and we still have a boot camp. But what we have done is we've broadened it, and we have weights now, and we do a lot more weight stuff. And part of the reason is the way I train myself for longevity and to have a really good quality of life. I really believe in a certain type of lifting and a certain type of workouts, and you know, it's about building muscle, and it's the same as in all the sports I played. We're trying to keep the weight down as low as we can, but be able to lift the most amount of weight
Yeah.
to create the most amount of force. And that's always been my thing. And as you know, if you start watching or you start reading or you start watching all the studies in fitness, that's where it's going for longevity. It's about how strong you are, how much power you hold. I'm a big believer in balance. Like for all the sports I've had, you needed good balance. And as I've been aging and with all my aging friends, I've been noticing like legs go first. Then when the legs start to go, the core starts to go. And then all of a sudden you have balancing issues. That's kind of like my philosophy in the gym. And, you know, when we do weightlifting, I mean, we have bodybuilders, and I'm not saying anything. If bodybuilding's your thing, that's great. But I make sure people don't mix up bodybuilding with what I do,
Yeah.
because bodybuilding is aesthetics. It's about looking good, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're building force or strength. And of course, you're getting stronger because you're you know, it's hypertrophy. You're trying to get the muscle bigger,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that a guy with that big muscles is that strong. And I know there's always that controversy, and I always go back to Olympic lifting. I mean,
Yeah.
you got guys doing 3 times their body weight,
Yeah.
and you'll never find a bodybuilder that can do 3 times their body weight in anything.
That's right. That's right. I tried Olympic weightlifting for a short time, not too long ago, actually. And I looked around, and just like you said, everybody there nobody was like the bodybuilder type. Nobody was big and chesty and shouldery, but they could lift crazy amounts of weight, the snatch and all that kind of stuff. And I can't remember all the names of the moves, but I was just like, oh my God, there were young ladies there that were like, 120, 130 pounds that were putting over their head 170 pounds. And I'm just going, wow, this is incredible.
So that's kind of like my whole thing in my fitness, and it served me really good. And I feel like the way I believe training should be has gotten me from one sport to the next sport to the next sport. And during that span of 3 different sports where I became world champions at, I've delved into other things. Like I raced those kayaks.
Oh, wow.
And I actually qualified to be in the Olympic trials, but it was during racquetball, so I had to do my racquetball because that's where I was making my money, so I had to give that up. And then I started free diving, where with one breath of air you go down, and I was spearing fish, and I was diving over 100 feet on one breath. I qualified for the Hawaii team. I was supposed to go to the nationals, but again, another racquetball obligation made me have to bow out of that. And at 31 years old, I was training for MMA at the University of Hawaii pool. And one of the scholarship breaststrokers was like, "Hey, tough guy, you want to race?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I'm down for any kind of race." And so I raced him, and we did with a kickboard, we did a breaststroke kick, because that's what he was. And I beat him. And so the coach came over, and he was like, "Did you just beat my guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I want to see you do a full breaststroke." And so I beat the guy again.
Oh, gosh.
And he offered me a scholarship. So I swam for University of Hawaii for a year.
Wow.
But the reason I'm kind of telling you this is because it's not that I'm a gifted athlete, because I was never a gifted athlete from when I was young. I believe that it's the way I believe in training and how to train the body. I feel like I got onto something at early in my career. And one of the things I realized, and I learned it the hard way in MMA, was when you get big and you get bulky, you got no gas.
Yep.
Your punches don't have any more snap anymore. It has a lot of power, in a sense, power meaning a lot of push. So I'd hit guys and they would take 2 steps, but I wasn't knocking out anyone. Because you just can't.
No snap on it.
And And so right there, I knew that my theory all along was the right thing.
I used to feel that way when I was in my teens and 20s up till 30. I was doing a lot of different martial arts as well, taekwondo, kickboxing, and I always liked to stay lean, not like I am now, but I was probably 145 pounds, and I always felt the same about larger opponents, is that by the time they move, like I can move 3, 4, 5 times, but same thing, like they gas pretty easily. There wasn't much snap on it, and you kind of see a different physique in MMA today than you did in the past as well. I mean, you look back at like fighters like I remember like Cabbage, right?
Cabbage. Yeah,
he wasn't like he was a big guy, but he
wasn't buff and muscular.
Yeah, but he had snap.
Yeah.
He kicked quick, he punched quick. It was pretty deadly guy.
yeah, he definitely was.
Yeah,
he didn't look like much, right?
Was he also from Hawaii as well?
Yeah. He's same town from BJ Penn.
Yep, that's right. So where you're at today, I think you're saying that the way you train, some of the exercise, I've looked at some of your boot camp exercise, and it seems like there's a lot of core and balance, and just like you said, like keep. Yeah. I work in healthcare, so I know a lot about like what happens when we get older, like when those falls happen. It's always related to balance. You see a hip, you see a shoulder, something like this.
Yeah.
And then people don't get back up, right? I was watching the thing, it's called The Blue Zones on Netflix the other day. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about just how it is in Okinawa, and the number of times that these individuals get up per day was a big part of their core strength, right? And it's like, well, we don't do a lot of that in the United States. We kind of sit at a comfortable position and rise to something that's less comfortable, but maybe not as many times a day as they're doing in Okinawa. So what else at this age? I've seen some of your recent posts kind of talking of ways that you stay healthy. Obviously, exercise, and I can see just there's a lot of mental aspect to your exercise as well. Like you said, your quiet time, your time of peace, or that time where you're in a bubble, which I think we all need some of that time. But I can say, like for me, 46, turning 47, that hormone levels are changing, that's for sure impacting things like energy level, strength, body composition. Like, have you taken any sort of scientific or empirical or experiential type of approach towards managing blood values, testosterone levels, any supplements or things like this?
Yeah, so many years. I mean, I think as soon as I got into about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that's when I started studying testosterone and the hormones and how they affect, because I noticed guys were getting big, and you had guys like Mark Kerr, the crushing machine, and you had Mark Coleman that just like were just jacked, right? But somehow, even if they were that big, they had good endurance. And what I started learning is the way they had mixed their compounds was the trick. But I also read up a lot on the side effects. And one of my jobs that I actually had a real job was I used to work for Merck Pharmaceuticals. And so that's where I got into reading case studies, and I started having to meet doctors and get to actually talk to doctors. And I'm supposed to be talking to the doctors about selling the drug that I represent. But there's so much more interesting things than that, right? So like when I would see a pulmonary doctor, man, I want to know about how can I get my lungs to hold more oxygen, or how to get my delivery of oxygen to my body better. And I would talk about those things, and they're totally interested in that. And then, when I see a cardiologist, I talk about heart rates and my philosophy in training in heart rates. And, I learned a lot of things from the cardiologist, like those charts that they have about the aerobic level, burning the most fat, and learning that those things are just basically for liability, and it's,
like, are you talking like peak value, those type, so how they say like your age and that your heart, where you should get at the maximum that you should have your heart rate at?
Exactly. So one of my questions to them is that, what happens when you pass your max heart rate, right? So 220 minus your age, that's your max heart rate. And they're kind of like, I don't know. I mean, it's like a heart attack.
Yeah, you get worried. That stuff gets me worried anytime. So there's one of my excuses.
Yeah. So this is the thing. When I asked them that question, I was already training at 220 beats per minute. That's where I could get my heart rate to. And according to their calculations, 196 was my max heart rate, according to their charts. And so I already knew the answer, that it doesn't blow up. But this is the thing that I learned, is the human body, when you start getting close to that max heart rate that's on that chart, you're going to just stop, because we're humans. We have pain receptors in our brain. And we have, I call it like pain tolerance, right? So if you're like a lamb or a sheep, you'll run till your heart blows up. Us as humans will never, ever do that. We'll stop way short. In fact, I saw a study that said that when you think that you can't go anymore, you still have 60% left in your gas tank.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
And when I saw that, that's when I realized, like, I got to keep pushing that threshold. So one of the things I do with some of the athletes here is I do this pain threshold camp. And for 1 week, I push their limits and push their limits. They think they're going to die, but they never die. Right? But then after this 1 week, now all of a sudden, these guys push so much harder than anyone else. And their discipline in their head and their mindset becomes so much stronger. And I picked that up in Japan. They call it spirit training. So before, in Japan, if you wanted to join Shuto, they had this brutal training. And I watched it. I'm like going, how can anyone survive that? But then you turn around and you watch a Japanese fighter that was fighting in Shuto. You never see any of them stop because they're tired. Ever. And that's where I was like, this is it. This is how you're supposed to be. And then as I got older, I started realizing, like, I can't hold 220. So right now at 58, I think my max heart rate should be, I want to say it's like in the 140s, somewhere in that range maybe. But I still, like today, I got up to 161, and I've been up to 191, and I keep trying to push that, because every year that you get older, that max heart rate drops.
That's right.
According to the chart. So if you follow that and you get to 100 years old, it's 120 beats per minute. That's like nothing.
That's standing still.
And I even tested it. I have a 97-year-old client. The first day he came to train with me, when his heart rate went to 100, he was bogging. I mean, he had to sit down, and he had to. And I'm like, wow, 97 years old, your max heart rate is like in the 120s. That's max heart rate for you. So like 126, I think it is. So little by little. And the disclaimer to this whole thing is, if you're a couch potato, don't try to push it. because
It's a
there
little
is
by
a
little.
chance you can get a heart attack.
Progress, right? Day by day.
Yeah. So anyway, this guy's max heart rate, I think, is 126. After training him for 3 months, he's doing 130 beats per minute,
Wow.
140 beats per minute. His max is 156 right now.
Wow. 97 years old. That's great.
Yep. And his heart rate comes right back down to 80 before we start the next exercise. And before it was like taking a long time. Now it's like within 2 minutes, it's right back down.
Wow.
I think you're doing something right, because I've watched, like I said, a lot of your shorts and your Instagram, and I can remember a gentleman not too long ago that talked about catching RSV and his immune response by basically
that's the
pushing
guy.
his body. Right? It's same guy.
The same guy.
Wow, inspiring. Yeah, I mean, he was very cognizant of, what exercise was doing for him as far as preparing him for those sort of battles. And I think that, it takes battle to be able to survive battle, right? Like,
totally.
it takes some work up front to be able to build the muscles, to build immune system, to build the balance, to really do a lot of prevention. I want to inject something that we have to inject. I don't know if you got a chance to look through some of our past episodes and kind of where I come from. I grew up local in Los Angeles, kind of a suburb, Hispanic, Caucasian suburb, but I grew up in healthcare, and I've seen a lot of chronic illness as a result of personal family experiences, but then also becoming a professional, seeing people that, succumb to diabetes, to hypertension, to obesity, then leading to other complications like chronic kidney disease. And I'm not sure, how incidental it is in Hawaii right now, but I do know there are a lot of dialysis centers in Hawaii. And
Diabetes is high. It's high here.
okay, so, your work is so important, on top of the mindset and the wellness and the balance and prevention of injuries, like prevention of illness, right? Having the right discipline in life to eat right, to rest, enough, and to participate in some level of physical activity. That takes discipline. What's your experiences with those type of chronic illness in Hawaii? You said there's a lot. It's rampant. Anything personal that comes to mind?
I feel like I'm fortunate and I'm blessed in the sense that I've had the opportunity to have people with that are diabetic. I got people that come into our gym, and blessed in the sense that, okay, we got diabetes, people with diabetes in our gym, high blood pressure, they got high cholesterol.
Yep.
I mean, they got everything. And by training properly and watching your diet, and not like a crash fad diet, not like this super strict diet, just change one thing at a time. We've had guys get off of their medications.
Yeah.
I've had opportunities, because of Merck, to meet a lot of doctors, and it's a really sad thing because a lot of people, like, say, for example, I met a vascular doctor, and he does a lot of the amputations of diabetic people, right? Because that's what he does. And I asked him, because I heard it from a bunch of other people, that when someone has to lose their leg or part of their leg because of diabetes, how soon do they come back and they have to lose their other leg?
Yeah.
Because I heard it's really high.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, it happens all the time.
Yep.
And I said, why can't these people just change what they do? And he said he really doesn't. That's not his study. He just basically does what he has to do to save their lives.
I do the end part, right? Is basically where he's at. Yeah. And that's quite often the circumstance.
Yeah. And then I saw this, I was reading this article by that Dr. Attia. And he was saying that the modern American society isn't really afraid of cancer. And he says what tells him that is the obesity in the country. It's an epidemic.
Yeah.
So if you were afraid of cancer, there would be no obesity. And he also mentioned, like, even alcohol consumption, how that has been skyrocketing. It's been going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And he goes, all the recent studies on alcohol is showing how much different cancers it can cause, from artery, from tongue, all the way where it goes, and how it turns into ethanol, and it's poison, basically. Right? And people will still drink it, and it's kind of like cigarette smoking. 50 years ago, they didn't think it was bad for you, even secondhand smoke.
Yeah.
And then
Now we know
within
third
10
hand.
or 15 years, right? It's all like it's cancer causing. It's bad for your health. You got to stop.
Yeah.
And I think alcohol is exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to find that it's going to do that same route, because I've been seeing studies coming out every month there's a new study on alcohol and how bad it is for you.
Well, it's ironic that you bring up cancer, kidney disease, right? Which affects 37 plus, close to 40 million Americans right now.
Yep.
Probably around the 750,000 range that have it at the end stage and require like some sort of therapy every other day or every day to stay alive, or a transplant, right? Is actually got like a lower prognosis on life than certain types of cancer. So in other words, you have a better chance of survival with certain types of cancer than you do with kidney disease. And it's so incidental and so prevalent, and so some cases isolated to a demographic. So like here in California, right, you'll see more urban demographics. I'm not sure how familiar you are with California, but let's say like areas like certain parts of Long Beach or Compton that are low household incomes, low insured rates. The high school graduation rates aren't as high as they are in other places. Multifamily households where you just see like much higher incidence of this stuff than other places. And it's safe to say that African Americans and Hispanics are the number one and number two highest incidence of this in the country. But there are like pockets where it's not African American Hispanics, it's Caucasian, or it's Pacific Islander Asians. So it really is about community. And it's one reason why I was excited to have you on here, aside from being a fan of what you've done in your athletics, but just the community that you're building there with your gym. The stories that I'm seeing with the elderly gentleman that really has a good cognizant level of prevention in his life right now. So can you share any more of the success stories that you've had in the gym with, kind of reformation or rehabilitation of individuals?
Yep. And, even as far as like, say, for example, there's a lot of people that, like, one of my clients came to me before I even started training him. He had the back issue, he had a knee issue, and he had shoulder issues. And he's been doing yoga. All his past trainers used to have him do yoga, and this guy's out of New York. And, they told him yoga, stretching. And then when I met him, he was interviewing trainers. And when I went to see him, my whole thing was I was going to be straight, and I wasn't that interested in picking up another client. And I told him, I said, I think it's because you're weak. And I thought for sure he was going to get pissed off and he was going to get the heck out of here, right? And he goes, oh, very interesting. I've never heard that before. Show me what you mean. Let's start training tomorrow.
Oh, that's great.
And since I started, within 1 month, his back started getting better.
Yeah.
His knee got a little better. His shoulder got a little better. Actually, not a little better. His shoulder got so much better that he's able to surf again, which he hadn't done in, 20 years because his shoulder was bothering him so much. And the way I figured that out, too, is he was a lot more flexible than I am. But mobility-wise and strength-wise, I was way higher than he was.
On the strength side?
Yep.
Yeah.
On the strength side, I was a lot stronger than he was.
Yeah.
And I took my chances because I did yoga and it did nothing for me. I had a guy from India live with me for 6 months, and I didn't get any more flexible at all.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I started getting more back issues. I started getting like lower back problems, which from playing racquetball, the lower back's like pretty trashed.
Oh, is it really?
And it started getting worse. And
I gotta say, that sport looks horrendous, man. Like, I cannot imagine like the speed at which you move in. Yeah, like, oh man, that looks like a killer.
That wrecked everything in my body. My knees, my shoulder, my neck, everything is wrecked from racquetball. Everyone thinks from fighting I got beat up in jiu-jitsu.
It was racquetball.
That's not it. It was all racquetball. It's all racquetball injuries.
I got tore up from jiu-jitsu for sure. Like shoulders and knees all, like I don't even try because it's for sure gonna it's going to for sure come out now if I do something, you know. Yeah, I probably need surgery, but I don't know. I feel like I'm beyond that, the need, you know. So Egan, enlighten us a little bit about the, you know, to the man's health side of things, controlling testosterone, keeping what testosterone gives us in our youth into the, you know, the mid-age, into the senior years. How do we hold on to it?
Okay, so I'm 58 right now, right? And what I've learned through all the different studies and studies that I've read on is and it's kind of a bummer, right? Because the more of an athlete and the harder you trained when you were young, as you get older, your testosterone levels are going to be a lot lower than the person who just exercised and worked out and did those things naturally and didn't overtax their body. So that's one of the things, right? And that's why a lot of the professional athletes or college athletes, after college or after their professional career, if you look at most of them, they're way out of shape.
Yep.
But it has to do with eating habits, because they're still trying to take in the calories they used to, but they're not burning as much. That's one thing.
Yep.
Testosterone level starts going down, metabolism starts to slow down, and all of these things together just creates this really bad thing where we're going to start getting fat, we're going to start getting lazy, then we're going to start getting all kinds of different sicknesses, right? Chronic illnesses. And I've been studying that for a long time. And, you know, those are the things that I've always taken in consideration, because what happens after I'm not a professional athlete?
Yeah.
I don't want to end up like that. I want to be able to still be 90 years old and maybe still snowboarding, you know, and still foil boarding. And maybe I can't foil board, so I'll drop back to surfing.
Yeah.
And maybe it won't be a short board, it might be a long board.
Drop back to
but I'm going to continue to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is not only take care of your physique, you got to also watch what you eat, but not be so strict on the diet. And the last thing is you got to monitor those things. You got to do blood work. And for me, for years, every time I tried a new supplement, I did my blood work. I wait 3 months during the supplement. I do my blood work again.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't lie. That cannot lie.
Yeah.
And so all the supplements that I've tried, which is, I mean, I try so much. Everything comes out new that I think I could benefit from it. I'll try it doing blood work.
Okay.
So I've spent a lot of money paying for it, because I get one a year for your physical. And then I'm doing 3, maybe 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So, and with that said, we're talking about, say, for men and even for women, testosterone goes down. Women need testosterone also.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I tried all the different supplements, because what happened was when TRT first came out, I got a call from a lot of different doctors that was switching to being a doctor of testosterone, basically, right? TRT doctors. But they make so much money.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted me to be a spokesperson.
Yep.
And they're offering me money to be a spokesperson. But I'm like, if I'm not using it, why am I going to be a spokesperson? I'm not that kind of, I won't do things for money.
Yeah.
And so I researched that a lot. And then my whole thing from way back before, when I was jiu-jitsu and I saw the guys doing steroids, I just knew, like, you put in testosterone in your body's going to stop producing testosterone.
Yep.
And maybe, I want to say 10 years later, after I came up with that belief, one of my buddies who did steroids, and he didn't overdo it. He did it just enough. I mean, you could tell he was a little jacked, a little bit puffy, but he was strong. Anyway, there was a time where he wanted to have kids. Yeah, and he wanted to have kids all of a sudden after 10 years.
Yeah.
His sperm count was 0.
Oh, gosh.
0. And I thought to myself, it's exactly what I thought I believed is true.
Yeah.
That if you put in testosterone, your body won't create the testosterone.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, that's a long story. I figured that part out, and I helped him get it. And so till today, when TRT came out, I refused to get on TRT. And there was a point where my testosterone was, I want to say 250, or it might have been even below that.
It's on the low side.
And I started not recovering.
Yep.
And I think I wasn't feeling the energy. Like, I didn't really want to work out that much, but because I was so used to it and it was part of my routine, I would just
Kept it
drive
on.
myself through it. But then I'd be getting even more. By the end of the week, I was so sore. I'm like, I can barely even like walk on a treadmill. I was that sore. And I was like, something's wrong. Like, and then I started forgetting stuff, and I couldn't remember. Like,
Weren't as sharp.
I'd walk into a room, going to get something, and I get to the room like, what did I come here to get? And then so I started researching what happens when your testosterone drops. With that said, some people can function. They always function on low testosterone, and they're fine.
Yeah.
They don't have energy problems. They're not getting belly fat. They're not getting memory problems. They're not getting any of those things. Those guys are fine. But guys like me, we need more testosterone.
Yeah.
So I started trying all the different products. 3 months, stop. Nothing happens. 3 months, stop. And there's also a placebo effect, because some of those products I took, I'm like, ooh, I think this one's working. I think this is it.
Yep.
I'm recovering. I'm feeling better. I'm getting stronger. And then I do my blood work, and I was like,
nothing
not
different.
It.
It's all in your head. Yeah.
And then I came across this one product where I made a post on it, and if people wanted the link to DM me, and 4 days after that, I must have DM'd at least 100 people.
Oh, wow. Well, you're going to have to DM me next, because I'll tell you, I'm right there. Like, I don't know my last blood work, but the previous time that I took my blood work, I was on the low end. And I am experiencing all the things that you're describing as far as composition of body, like where it sits. You know, my weight hasn't changed much, actually, because I was a pretty stocky, like fairly built, but now it's sitting in different spots, and my clothes don't fit anymore, or stuff like that, right? Energy level, the drive, which I think I have a lot of programming, like you said, especially on the end of like business. But it's also, I can feel a different. I don't wake up in the morning ready to go anymore. Like, I gotta get going, and I used to like be waiting for, like, I don't need an alarm clock. Like, I am going to wake up at 6:30 every morning. No, and before that, if I don't force myself to get up at 6:30, I'm going to get up before that. It's kind of all slipping away. So I definitely want to maybe experiment a little bit with something that's on the safe side, because I've done the other side, and I can say for sure that's probably a part of why I was low when I did that last test, is because I had not just very recently, but fairly recently cycled off TRT, and that was up front one of the side effects that the physicians had told me I would have is, you're gonna take a while for your body to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and I feel like when I send out this link, I start off with, I suggest that you do blood work so you have a baseline.
Yeah.
Unless you did one a year ago and you haven't done anything since,
right?
You know that you're going to be lower than you were a year ago.
Yeah.
It's just, we got 1 year older, we dropped some.
That's right.
So as long as you know that, where your baseline is, because it could be placebo effect. And the thing that I know about testosterone is there's all different things that it can be. Like, you can have a total testosterone that's high, but your free testosterone is very low.
Yeah.
And so the doctor will tell you, oh, you know what? You're fine. You don't need TRT, or you don't need more testosterone. You got plenty. But that's the thing. And there's a lot of other different things that
So
needs to be
translate that
adjusted.
for me, Egan. Does that mean that you've got like testosterone on board, but not able to utilize it?
It's not what do they call it? Bioavailable.
Gotcha.
So it's not being used, and that's why you feel the way you do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. So TRT is not going to do it for you. It's gonna be a rough road at TRT for that.
Yep.
Right. Whereas this product that I've been using, I noticed that what happened was it freed up more of my testosterone, and also increased my free testosterone.
Yeah, got you.
And my total. Right. So, I mean, with that said, I mean, I did 3 blood works after my first one every 3 months. So that was 1 year I tracked it. And from under 250, I'm at 700, I don't know, 50 or 60 right now. And it's been that way for the last 5 years. So every year I do my blood work, unless I'm trying a new supplement, which I haven't tried in over 5 years.
So you're getting younger.
And Yeah, well, my testosterone hasn't gone over past 800, which, for my range, it's 350 to 1100. So
Yeah.
I could be at 1100,
Right.
but I probably would have to use TRT.
Right.
But I feel like once you do TRT, you got to stay with it the rest of your life. Otherwise, you're going to suffer. It's almost like, when someone does say, well, testosterone, TRT is steroids, but
That's right.
guys who do steroids, and you see them puff up in overnight.
Yep.
These guys can never stop because
That's right.
they feel
It goes away
horrible without it.
It goes away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
it
like
goes
you
away.
said, there is a placebo. Like you're used to seeing built like almost on a daily, right? Building new mass, and that's just not possible without those sort of supplements.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I will say is I just read this one article where they're talking about athletic performance, and it's the same as we get older. If you did a cycle of steroids and the increase that you got and the gain that you got, when you get off the cycle, you're going to lose a lot of it.
Yeah.
But they said the unfair advantage in life after that is that those people whose muscles learned how to get that big,
Can do it.
now they're able to do it, reduplicate it because of muscle memory. So they have an advantage
Interesting thought.
for the rest of their lives over guys who have never done any kind of steroids.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting to me because I'm like,
It is.
Maybe I'm going to run a cycle.
Yeah, it is. It's like one time and you get this, you get this memory of how to do it again, right? And that's really interesting. I think I can see it as well in different folks that I've seen run cycles, and the way they're able to put back on even off cycle.
Yep.
Egan,
And then the strength that they gain, they don't lose it all.
Yeah.
They maintain a bunch of it, which is, but what that article or that study didn't show is that the mental part of it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to be extra tough mentally in order to regain all of that.
Well, I'll share that I've had my experience there, and the level of strength that you need, like nobody should be doing that stuff if they're not 100% like set in life. And when I say like relationships and things like this, if there's any instability around hormone replacements, like it's going to be exaggerated by 100, and poor decisions come out. We hear about people running trend and things like this, doing really bad stuff to themselves and to others. So definitely something. I'm glad that you're preaching the right approach. Towards less complicated. When I say complicated, less potential complications. To increasing your testosterone levels, the safe way to do it, running labs, doing things with a physician's guidance is always, whether it be exercise, changing in your diet, taking different sort of medication supplements, it's always, I think, the best practice.
Yeah. 100%.
So, great example, Egan, of excellence in athletics, excellence in community. I want to ask two questions before we end tonight, or kind of just touch on two things, and I'll just preface what they are. One is I'd like to have a little talk about some of the actors out in the field today. We talk about the etiquette of athletes or actors in the field, and then second, I've been paying attention. You've been on a recent trip. It looks like you've got like some really cool things going on in family, and I'd love to give you some time to kind of brag on some of the accolades of your family. What's going on in your family. I think there's some exciting, like I said, exciting things going on. So first, when we talk about the strength, and I'm thinking about an upcoming show. Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. And one of the things that, aside from some pretty impressive training footage with Mike Tyson, a lot of folks saying that, hey, he might be at this age, but the last thing to go is the power, and that's the power that you don't want to screw with. So I'm curious to know, like, assuming, the cards all land right and that we actually get to see this fight, what are your thoughts on it in its preface, and how do you see it going if we actually get the pleasure of seeing this thing?
Okay, so this is when you learn how to box properly, that technique that Mike Tyson has is never going to disappear.
Yeah.
So, like, till today, I would never want to get hit by Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Even when I was in
No.
my fighting prime, I would never want to get hit by Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Which says that I think he still can hit almost as hard as what he used to.
I do too.
But I feel like what he doesn't have is he doesn't have that ability to sustain that power for a long time, just because of age.
Yeah.
So if that fight goes short, I mean, if it can be ended in the first round or 2 rounds, I got Tyson 100%. But if it starts to go long, and I don't know how many rounds it's scheduled for, but I would say after the 4th round, it's going to be hard for Tyson to win. And Jake Paul might just win because of sheer size and youth.
Yeah.
And I think, that's all I really thought of so far about that fight. But I would really love to see Tyson win.
My era, like, he's still a superhero, man. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Mike Tyson's
Me
Punch
too.
Out, like, scariest video game ever, right? Like, even playing that video game, I got scared of Mike Tyson, right? But just the way that he's actually studied war and warriors, and the mentality, the good and the bad. Like, I've always looked up to the guy since day number 1. I remember these, the big shows when I was 3-4 years old, watching him. My parents have it on the TV and just watching him annihilate people, right? And then getting into martial arts and actually hearing from martial artists how much respect they have for him in his footwork, in his style, that it's not just this brawler, but it's a very methodic individual, that when you talk about the training and the work ethic, I don't know if there's anybody above and beyond as far as the training mechanisms there.
Yeah.
So another group that's I think kind of hot topic right now and a little bit scary is Ryan Garcia, and what's going on with him. Like, what is going on over there? What's your lens on that? And is it good for the sport? Is it is it the hype that we talked about just to sell the tickets, or is there really something here?
I like King Ryan. I mean, I think I love. I mean, I've been following him for a long time, and he, being that he does some comical stuff like that body punch challenge, and I have this feeling. I've never met him in person, but I have this feeling he's actually a good guy because he's young. I'm wondering if he's getting stuck in that hype, like he's getting caught up in that hype, and sometimes those guys get out of where they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
and something's going to happen that's going to bring them back if that's the case, because it always does.
Yeah,
but I see him going into an athletic store or whatever, a shoe store. I saw this one, and they closed the doors, and everybody who was in there, he paid, take whatever shoe you want.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really cool. And the only thing that gets me worried is whenever, I mean, guys like him, he needs bodyguards, I think, because people are going to want to test them.
Yep.
But his entourage is so big that makes me a little bit worried, because anytime I see people or famous people with huge entourages, I usually get it's usually not a good thing. And the reason for that is they're probably not all there in the best interest for King Ryan, or Mike Tyson had that posse before, and they weren't in there.
Almost $1 billion in revenue, right? And had nothing to show with it. Of course, much different case now, but
and then you see all the other fighters. Mayweather, same thing.
Yep.
But then you look at Pacquiao.
Yeah.
He comes walking by himself.
Yeah.
And
he's a politician,
Pacquiao.
right?
I mean, he is. I mean, Pacquiao is humble. He's down to earth. He can fly a private plane, if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But no, he goes on the commercial plane just like regular people do.
Yep.
And the community that he puts himself is the regular people.
Yeah.
And I feel like he'll never go wrong being that way. And you asked me a question about the community of my boot camp and the place I train, and I feel like I didn't really delve on that, but I try to create this atmosphere where everyone who's in there is working for the same reason. They're trying to become healthier. They're trying to become more fit. They're trying to become stronger. And that community itself, I feel, is strong. And that's the kind of people I want to put myself around, right? And with that said, as I grew up, say, from racquetball, I noticed that all the guys at racquetball that partied they all hung around with each other. If they're only drinkers, they only drank, and these are the one group.
Yeah.
If they were doing other kinds of drugs, these guys kind of hung around with each other.
Yeah.
And then what I noticed is you can have one guy who is straight and clean, and then he hangs around all of these other guys, and little by little, he's going to be just like those guys, even if at the beginning he goes, I can hang out with these guys.
Yeah.
I can become better racquetball players just like these guys without doing the bad stuff that they do. But it never saw that happen.
Yeah.
Same thing with fighting. Same thing with Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Same thing in regular life. Guys say that, I'm going to hang around with these guys because they're fun, but I'm not going to get involved in the stuff that they're involved in. And guess what? After 1 month, they're already starting to do a little bit and a little bit more of the things that those people do. And I feel like that's why in Egan's Fitness, the community is so important, that we support each other, because it's a small community that really care about, what's going on in their lives, and wanting to have, Dr. Tia talks about becoming a centurion, right? And being not just living to 100 years old, doing things till you're 100 years old, doing activities, outdoor activities. And that's the community that I want to develop, and with a lot of positive things and the right mindset. And
I love what you just said. We've talked about like the power of your circle. I think we said who's your five, who's the five that you hang around with, and how you kind of average out, right? And I love the theme of those that you're surrounded with in your community is to be more healthy, to be more well, to be centurions, to not just live, but to do things until you're 100. What a great cause. What a great purpose. I think, my lens on that has to be adjusted. And I'm glad you just said that, because, I often think of my five or my surrounding, of business successful, right? And quite often we don't think about like what the really important stuff, right? Like your health and your family and your faith and these sort of things. So again, I think, you just showed me that I need to make an adjustment in thinking about the five as people, and maybe all of us need to think about this as, those five, are they actually taking us to to a place that we're more likely to achieve the things and be able to see the things that are most important? Not that business and success is not important, but I think when you surround your people at the core of their heart, that they're actually what's best for you, that you're going to win every single time. So thank you for that. Egan,
and mentioning that, I have a post that I talk about, and it says that the majority of the people, when they turn 40 years old, they're actually only just waiting to become buried. So I have a post that talks about that. And basically, the article that I read on that was that when you turn 40 is about the age where people go, I'm going to stop snowboarding because I'm too old for that. And that I'm too old for things start to happen. And I'm a big believer that if you do that, you're just putting yourself to the grave way too early, because then you're going to not be able to do anything by the time you're 70, and you're just waiting to be buried. Is basically, I think I explained it better in the post, but that's the gist of the whole thing.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And once I started like putting that out, I started finding like this 97-year-old guy that drives by himself. He lives by himself. He's gaining strength working out with me. I mean,
that's awesome.
Everything about it. And then I run into this longevity doctor that I've known for years. He's 81 years old, and he's going to Japan for this past spring break. He told me, I'm going to go snowboarding. It's going to be good snow. And I was like, oh, right on. You must be a good snowboarder. And he told me, he goes, I've never snowboarded before.
Oh, my God.
That's it, man. That's it.
And if you ever snowboarded before and you catch that edge, you know how bad that fall is, right? And I didn't want to tell the guy that.
Not scared.
My belief is go, just, and I hope you don't get hurt. The day after, I text him, and he goes, oh, I'm still in one piece. And I was like, right on. And this is what so I said, man, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And you know what he texts me back? He goes, no, never grow up. That way, you're going to stay longer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I make a post on that, and at the end of the post, I talk about something the late Steve Jobs said. He said, always stay hungry and stay foolish.
Love that.
And I kind of relate that into that sense that, hey, I'm 81 years old, and I'm going to learn how to snowboard.
Yeah.
That's a little foolish
Yeah.
in a sense, but with the right mindset, he did it. And he said, I can't wait to go again.
Egan, have you seen that Netflix series, the Blue Zone, yet?
Oh yeah, I have.
I mean, it just reminded me of some of the folks in that series where they were living life, smiling, laughing, joking. Like the never grow up part really struck me.
Yep.
I think I probably grew up really early, and I'm trying to go backwards now.
Yeah.
But hey, Egan, I know it's getting towards the evening for you. Wanted to close out with just a little bit of time on family, kind of, you've had this great lens on life and how to discipline and train yourself. And you've got 5 children that, must have had some sort of diffusion or osmosis of some of that, because I think they're doing great things as well. What can you tell me about, the result of who you've been through your life as a young man, moving into adulthood with the athletics and the training people, and how that's resulted and what's going on with the next generation?
For me, my 3 oldest daughters, I feel like they kind of got the worst end of the deal of me, because I was still very competitive and still competing. And my mindset was about just discipline. Discipline is everything. Discipline is everything. And no excuses. There's no reason for you not to be able to wake up every morning early. There's no reason for you not to be able to do this or do that. And I feel like I was a little bit too rough on them. And like we were talking earlier, I never told them I love them. I just assumed they knew I loved them, because same thing with my parents, right?
Yeah.
I assumed they loved me too. And I think that was really rough for my 3 older daughters. And I've been years of working on this, trying to build the relationship better, because it was rough for them, and I can see it, and I didn't want that for my younger 2. And so I've been really working on trying to change my attitude and change myself, in the sense that I'm gonna break that generational thing that we have. And I also learned a lot about like say for my son, everybody's like, oh my gosh, you got a son. And I feel like God gave me a son last for a reason. Because if I had him early, I would have, like, he was going to wake up with me at 4 o'clock in the morning. He's going to do push-ups and sit-ups with me. He's going to do breathing drills, all the breathing exercises every single morning. And I don't miss it. It's been over 10 years that I do not miss those things. It's what I call non-negotiable. I would have drove him crazy. I would have drove him away. And he would have never loved sports like he does. And so what I did was, with my 2 youngest, I really tried to, if they're going to play a sport, let the coaches do the rein. And what I do is I just support them. And the beginning, it was so hard. I mean, it's so hard. And I always have to tell myself, okay, this is another way of working your discipline, like keeping your mouth shut.
They're going to be so scared of him, the coach, man. Like, oh my God, the dad's over there. Like, did you see what he did into that? Oh God, like, it's going to come maul me,
And granted, like, every coach knows who I am, because they're somewhere in my range. They're a little younger, but they grew up in the time of the boom of MMA. And most of them don't even know I played racquetball. All they know is I'm a MMA. I'm a gnarly fighter, right? But that stays with the coaches. My son, he wants to train, or my daughter, they want extra training. I'll help them. I'm never going to push them. And I always tell them that if you want daddy to help you, you got to ask me, because I'm not going to push you, because I want you to want it. I don't want to be the one that wants it for you. Which I see a ton of nowadays. Which that drives me nuts too.
I can imagine. I mean, in today's world, thinking, parents, somebody like you who's had success in athletics, seen the rewards, reap the rewards of it. And the rewards are so much bigger today, right? So, like, I think a lot of parents out there from day number 1 are thinking about monetizing their children's natural or disciplined, like, all you need is that one show, right? And everybody's set, right?
And that's why a lot of parents now, they have their kids playing one sport. And I really believe that's not going to be. And my son really loves baseball. I mean, he would play baseball all year long if he could. But I'm like, you're playing basketball?
Yeah.
You're playing water polo?
Yeah.
You're doing judo. Well, what about baseball? Well, when the season's over, the season's over.
That's one of them.
Yeah, but there's summer league, there's travel teams, there's club teams. Nope, you're not on any of them.
Yeah, you never really know where you'll end up. I mean, especially when you're young, you never know what's going to stick on the wall, right? What's going to be
but,
the one that
I also believe that every sport you play, you develop a certain athleticism from it.
Yeah.
You develop another different skill.
Right.
And if you just only play one sport, you're not going to develop all the other skills. And all those other skills at some point is going to help the sport that you decide that you want to play.
Yeah. And I'm going to translate that to any profession as well. I mean, I can think about, my first job, well, I should say my first job out of high school, I was a union iron worker. And what I learned was to work really hard, but I also learned that I don't want to work like that. I was like, no, I went through a journeyman, an apprenticeship to become a journeyman iron worker right out of high school, worked with my father, and I just hated the work, I learned how to work hard. Like you, my father taught me hard work, and he was the guy who would run with steel on his shoulder and run all day long, like bust his ass the whole entire 8 hours. When we got home, we'd like hit the couch and like, that's it, done for the day, right? Like maybe not even take a shower until late night or something like that. But I would have never thought out of high school that I'd end up where I am today, which is mainly healthcare focused. I do a lot of education to healthcare professionals, and in these years of my life, after working through a career like that, I'm thinking, I think we're aligned in that I want to help to build communities that are going to be healthy, not just in like the physical and mental aspect, but also in the community aspect, because there's so many issues that can really be prevented if we had a tighter community, a more educated community. Let's change the demographic even, right? Like help people get jobs that they can have a healthy way of living. That's kind of where I'm at today. So Egan, I really want to thank you for joining us tonight. And just last thought, I always like to get like the heaviest, the biggest piece of advice that you can give to an audience. And I'll preface that we actually have a very young male audience for the most part, 25 to 45 years of age, which I was saying earlier, it's kind of odd because I'm older than the bulk of our audience. But I think we're all facing kind of the same things. We've heard from fathers, we've heard from businessmen, we've heard from athletes and fitness trainers, and we're all just trying to make our mark on our families and our communities. So if I asked you, Egan, with all of the experience that you've got in all of those areas of life, what's the heaviest thing that you can lay on us to end off today's episode that we can take home and improve our lives, our families, our communities?
I think one of the most important things that everybody should think about, and starting young is even more important, and to remember that you have to make time for your health.
Yeah.
A lot of people focus so much on making money, becoming rich, becoming this,
Getting
that they
pointed at right now.
they sacrifice, they sacrifice their health. And then guess what? All that money that you've made, you're going to spend that to bring back your health.
Yeah. That's the way.
My thing is like, you got to make sure you take care of your health, because without your health, you have nothing at all.
And then you can't spend your money, huh?
You can't spend your money. You can't enjoy
You're locking
your money.
up your money by making it and not paying attention to health, huh?
Yep.
Very, very good. I got to tell you that even before we started today, just through the interactions we had through message and then just getting to know you from some of your posts, I can see that your community is going to really scale massively. One of the reasons I say that is, like, I feel like I know you. You're definitely somebody that I could see myself, putting in the 5, right? Those people around us. And I just want to let you know, you've got an open spot, an open invitation anytime you want to share some stuff with us. One of these days I'll get back out to the island, and you can go test my heart rate,
For sure. Okay.
But again, Egan, thank you so much, and all the blessings in the world to you your business, your
Thank
family, and your continued health.
Thank you, and same to you. All right, guys.
Take care. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Shaka.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, shaka.
Yeah.
This episode has been brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.